Hi everyone, my name is Robert Karlsson and you're listening to the Model Philosopher.
Hello, hello, NHIO. It's the web shop you need to know.
The web shop everybody needs to know. NHIO, it's the web shop.
Web shop you need to know. Tools, decals, files, and much more. Tools and decals, files, and much more. So don't lose time and visit the store. Visit the store. NHIO, NHIO.
NHIO,
Spend $50 or if you like even more to enjoy free shipping, free gift of your choice. To enjoy free shipping and free gift of your choice.
free gift of your choice. NHIO, NHIO, NHIO.
Welcome to the first episode of Season 2 of The Model Philosopher. In this episode, I'll be talking to Robert Karlsson about contrast and mood in his work. I will also be talking to Robert about his upcoming workshop with Scale Model Challenge in late February. Before I get into that, I'd like to thank those of you that wrote in for the previous episode and those listeners who gave me feedback on it. Paul Gallagher responded on the modelphilosopher.com blog. Thanks for a wonderfully inspiring roundup, Chris. So much exciting and creative work being done across and beyond the boundaries of traditional modelling, from pieces like Daikichi to the final mooring that fully capture and enchant with a vibe, to pieces that captivate and get one thinking, such as the Tall Chairs and Path of Least Resistance. I'm still working through my thoughts. Though not addressed directly in your roundup, it is striking how this compares with the turmoil and challenges you were writing about a year ago. Making the hard call to pivot ITA, switching up the podcasting approach and dealing with many of the negative topics swirling in the hobby like politics, internet barneys and judging scandals. From the outside, it seems like the changes have been a great success. It shows in the quality and depth of the podcast discussion and the creativity of the work you're doing now. I trust it is also starting to show on the business side too. Best wishes for yet more creative expression and fulfillment in 2025. Thanks, Paul. So much happens in a year that sometimes you forget how it started. Indeed, the first third of 2024 was difficult, but the creativity and drive of those around me has not only pushed me forward, I've also had to thank many people who also helped me to build a new business and podcast with their practical help, including Will Patterson, Robert Krombeck, Tom Annis and others. I'm not fond of waxing long and lyrical about the community, as I think it's something that is often overstated, frankly. But I'm lucky to be supported by a great many kind and inspiring people, including Paul yourself. Thank you. If you would like to give me feedback on the Model Philosopher, please do leave a comment on the blog at modelphilosopher.com. Join the conversation at Model Philosopher's Lounge Facebook group, or leave a comment on the Model Philosopher page on Facebook. Now onto this show's special guest, Robert Karlsson. Robert Karlsson, welcome to the Model Philosopher.
Thank you very much.
Now, we've been talking before you came on, but just for the sake of listeners, we don't actually know each other really, but I got to know your work because of the Scale Model Challenge magazine produced for the 15th edition last year, which I did the layout for and you provided some of the content for. And I really liked your work. I was immediately struck by sort of how visually striking it is and how strong it is in colour and contrast and style. So
thank you.
We wanted to get to know you and get you on, and here we are.
Yes.
Firstly, though, for those that don't know you, I'd ask you to introduce yourself and talk about how you got into.
Yeah, okay. When I was very young, I guess early teenager, I always been fascinating about fantasy and sci-fi stuff. Even though I didn't do anything myself, I always looked in books and stuff at the library. I remember Tolkien had a great book with pictures in the early beginning of the 90s or
Mm.
late 80s or something. And I also got into this role play. I don't know, it's called role playing games like
Yeah.
Dungeon and Dragons and stuff like that. We had our own versions in Sweden called Drakar and Demoner and Mutant as well. I think they were the first ones that came to Sweden. And what later on came with that was figures for the games in metal, those old style figures. And I also discovered this Games Workshop didn't have any store at that time in Stockholm, where I'm from, but there was another, how do you say, store or boutique store, yeah, and that was called Tradition. And they had all those figures from the Games Workshop side of things and some 40K stuff. And I remember I was struck when I entered that store for the first time, and I was also watching a lot of miniatures in their cabinets that I guess people from that store painted for display. And at the time, there was no mobile cameras either, so I couldn't take any photos of those and use those as a reference or anything like that. So what I did actually was a lot of work. I traveled with train to the city. It's about 20 minutes from where I lived at the time, and just tried to memorize what I saw in the cabinets. And then I went home, and the inspiration I got from that, I just tried to do it myself. And I did that a few times every week. But I guess that was just something because I had a friend in my class where in school who had the same interests. But he was always better than me. He was also the one who went with his family to London at some point for vacation, and I guess they visit the Games Workshop store there, probably the first one that was ever up. And he came home with some really cool stuff that I've never seen before. The paints from Games Workshop, the
Mm.
old hexagon pots, and they were actually too expensive for me at the time in Sweden. So I was using something from Humbrol called Fantasy, I remember. Maybe this was going on for a year and a half or something. And then I totally left this behind. I never touched a brush. Or I was later on studying music in school. So I have been a dedicated musician for many years and also been doing it full time. So later on, 2010, I think it was, when my first son was maybe 2 years or something like that. I found a couple of those miniatures I painted when I was a teenager, and also used to go to a toy store with my son, and I actually saw some new kits from Games Workshop and paints. So I took 1 plus 1 and made it 2, I guess, uh, and started again a little bit. But just as a rookie, no, I couldn't even blend my paint. I
Mm.
had no idea what I was doing. But uh, at that time, 2010, internet was kind of better a better thing than it was when I was a teenager. So I was just Googling this hobby, and I remember I was struck by the appearance of level that people were doing at the time. So from 2010 till now, I probably painted every day, more or less, uh, because I really wanted to get better. I thought this was amazing. So, yeah, so that's how it all started. I guess I planted my own seed when I was a teenager, and then I forgot about it, but I took it back. So that's the background story, I guess.
I had a similar thing actually back when it was Citadel Miniatures. I lived
Yeah.
in the deep dark southwest of England, and the nearest Games Workshop store was hundreds of miles away.
Mm.
But you might go in. There was actually a store in the town I lived in that sold like pipes and tobacco and
Mm.
trophies and things like that, and he had a stand of Citadel miniatures.
Okay.
So it was quite magical going and seeing these blister packs with white metal figures inside,
Yeah, yeah.
and sort of taking them home and putting watercolor on them and finding out that didn't work, and then
Mm.
trying on to stupid things. But yeah, I
Yeah.
did the same thing, left it alone for a long time, and got on with life and things like that.
Mm.
It was a huge shock coming back into it how much things had changed for
Yeah,
sure.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I returned when the Rackham era was just float on top of things, and the French painters was kind of the top notch, along with the Games Workshop heavy metal painters, of course. But I think a few years later than that, I think, well, the styles, I went through some periods of
Yeah.
styles, sort of, and I think that was a good start for me. If I started even earlier than 2010, I don't know, maybe it was more or less just Games Workshop stuff on the market. I don't know.
It's really bloomed, hasn't it, in the last sort of 10, 15 years, the amount
Yeah,
of
yeah.
stuff available.
Mm,
It's I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's because manufacturing's become slightly easier in a way. Because I mean, white metal, it's not an expensive process to do, but it's messy and it's dangerous
mm,
potentially,
yeah,
and you need space and equipment and all of this. And these days,
yeah.
injection molding's become much cheaper for one thing, but also printing is a thing as well now. So
Mm,
it's
yeah.
it's been fantastic for the growth of the hobby in general, I think.
I think cool. I think Cool Mini or Not, and later on, Big
Yeah.
Child made stuff that was a little bit different, and the resin material became more and more popular. And yeah, they had a very distinctive style as well. Big Child. I remember I was very influenced by their colorful style at the time.
Talking of
Yeah.
which, where do you think your style comes from? It's very dark and intense in tone. What do you think is the influence of?
Yeah, I try to think about that. Sometimes I think stuff just
Mm,
evolve, uh, and you don't really think much about it. But I know that my style has changed a lot over the years. If you go back in the early days, I think I was looking for a style because I've heard from guys that it's important to find your own style and not just painting without a goal or any vision. So that's what I've been trying to do over years, and I remember my style has changed a lot from a very colorful, more big child or Spanish type of painting when where the colors are very saturated. But later I found out I think Gerald Broom, I think he was probably the first one that had, to me at least, super great focus and a very, also kind of a dark tonality, where what I mean by that is that the focus is very clear. When you're looking at the miniature, it's like you know exactly where the eyes should go or look. And I think before I discovered that type of concept, people was just painting the miniatures all at the same level of focus. It's very typical, of course, and I think it's effective if you're
mm,
a gamer and you just want to see the miniature on the table. But for more like art stuff and the bigger miniatures we can paint today, where you have more freedom, I think that's very attractive to me to have a very clear focus. And I must say, I don't think I'm there yet, but I have that in mind always when I'm painting, that it has to be obvious where you look first and then second. So it's like a three-step process maybe for your eyes when you're watching. Because if you paint a miniature like an
mm.
even thing, or that where the attention is because I remember when I started to paint, I was thinking if it's sculpted, it should be seen or respected, all the details. But today, it's not. It's far from that. The way I'm thinking, it's just you have to leave some areas for less attention. Otherwise, it's just going to blow your head off because it's too much information.
I mean, for me, it makes sense because the way vision works, the actual area of focus from our eyes is quite small, and the periphery is
Mm,
kind of filled in, and it looks detailed from the corner of your eye, but it isn't really.
yeah,
You know, and it's kind of how your eye works, isn't it? That there's areas when you look at something that you focus on, and other things are more kind of sketched in, should we say?
yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's hard to talk about your own work, but when you see, because I have been judging a lot. I've been judging Scale Model Challenge, I think 2 times, etc. And you see stuff all the time that you just make small notes about, but you are thinking like this. I would never do it like this, and then you put it down and you see another figure. This is nice. This is and this. I mean, there is no. People are saying there is no right and wrongs, but it depends on what you're aiming for. If you want to paint in a realistic way, you have to take care of certain elements. Otherwise, it just look wrong to me anyway, because I see reality all the time,
Yeah.
as we all do, and I can see in a miniature when something is not right because of that. So it's like if you just are aware, you actually practice this stuff every day just by going out or just open your eyes in the morning. So I think it's very important just to use reference pictures when you're painting, especially in the beginning to see facial features. So, uh, especially in faces, it's very important to get it right because it looks so weird if you don't understand the volumes and the micro stuff and where light goes in the right places. And I'm no super expert myself, but I'm trying as good as I can, and so far it seems to have worked well. So,
There's a difference between looking and seeing, and quite
mm,
often people tend to think they know what something looks like, but their mental image of what it looks like isn't good enough to
mm,
translate to a miniature. It's not
yeah,
correct enough. And quite often
mm,
when you go to do something from memory and go to make it look like that, you don't get a satisfactory result. And if you refer visually to something while you're doing it, you notice things about it that you don't remember because you're really seeing it. You're really studying it and
mm,
looking for the things that you, particularly when you're working on a miniature or something, you're looking for certain things, aren't you, to be able to do them. So, like, what's this shadow look like here, or
mm,
and so you
yeah,
you look at it a lot more closely than you would in day to day life. And although, as you say, you can tell by looking at something whether it's realistic or not, you don't necessarily
mm,
know 100% of the reasons why it doesn't work.
no. Uh, that's a good practice when you're actually judging because you watch so many pieces at the same time, and if you're aware, it's like it's very good for your vision to see what looks wrong and what looks right, and you can uh, really get better yourself just by looking at a lot of miniatures, even if they are not. Some of them are not inspiration enough to get better because the level is so far away from your own. But I think to have a reference is the best thing, and it takes time and it's very hard work. I'm still struggling with a lot of stuff, and I mean, female faces sometimes can be really tough. Uh, it's so subtle,
Yeah.
all the volumes and the shadows and stuff, and if you don't do them right, it looks like something else, like she has too much
Mm.
makeup or she's older than she supposed to be from the sculptor's point of view, and you know.
Those exaggerated volumes on male faces are really great for, for painters.
Mm,
Female faces is a
mm,
bit trickier.
yeah, yeah.
It's a bit of a diversion from where I was going to take this conversation, but I have always wondered when I go to look at the figure, categories at Scale Model Challenge or another show of that size with that many figures, I kind of find it overwhelming that there's just so many, and they're so. And even even though you say obviously some are not as at the same level as others, pretty much all of them are at a pretty good level, and some of them are at an incredible
Mm.
level. So, how
Yeah.
do you judge? How do you manage to look at so many miniatures and maintain focus?
What I remember, because before we are judging, we always have a meeting with the other judges, and we get sort of a formula how to judge depending on the competition. And one thing I remember from Scale Model Challenge, I think it was, is that you choose, because that's not in all cases, but I think in many cases it's very easy to see the one or two miniatures that stands out from everyone else. And you go from there. If that's you see something and it looks striking from a distance, and you go up close, and it goes well with your expectations from a distance, and you see, yeah, it's really good close up as well, then this could be a gold, for example.
I'm smiling though because sometimes you get close up and you think, oh no.
Yeah, it could be uh, as you say, when you get close to it, then you see, okay, it was just from a distance. It works from a distance, but not in your hand. And it can be the opposite as well. It doesn't look like something incredible from a distance, but when you pick it up, you see, wow. So, and I think in most of the cases, gold has both of them. It's something that attracts you from 1 meter, and then when you pick it up, it's like, wow. Uh, but it's a lot of consideration, and it's about your own taste, of course, a little bit. But if the judges are at an even level, sort of mentally and what do you say? They have a similar experience with miniature painting, and then usually there's no problem to get along, and they have the same ideas as you. Uh, I've never been in a sort of a discussion with anyone, didn't get along or something like that. So, but that's usually how I do it anyway. And then it could actually be harder to divide silver and the bronze sometimes, but from the gold, we usually spread it out, and we can see the other metals from there. Uh, and then I think it's the same with the best of show, when we have picked out maybe 6 or 8 figures on a table, and everyone has to vote for what you think should be the best of show. Then I think it's even more about taste and what you see that you really like or what you prefer. But yeah, that's how I think about it. Yeah.
But it takes a lot of time, doesn't it? I know the figure judging is quite, maybe it's just a sheer volume, but it does seem to take a long time to get through all those miniatures.
Yeah, it always does. But I guess it depends on who you are judging with. Also, I had a situation where I was judging master with 2 other judges, and then on our left side we had people judging standard, and they were talking in a totally different way than we were. We were talking about the ambience, the experience, just to watch the figures and what it wanted to tell us.
Mm.
But they were just talking about technical stuff, like if there was a stroke somewhere, or that didn't look right, or a dot that didn't make sense. And to me, of course, it's going to take much longer, and in my opinion, it has nothing to do with miniature painting or art when you're going into those super technical subjects.
You said earlier that people say there's no such thing as a good way or a bad way. I think
Mm,
for me, the best way to think about it is the miniatures are either successful or unsuccessful. And how
mm,
you judge that is by working out what the aim was of the artist and whether they achieved it, I suppose. And you should be able to
yeah,
tell that without getting into too technical.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. Mm,
Now, your work, as I said, is quite dark in tone and quite intense and muted. And that brings a lot of sort of emotion and pathos to the things you work on. How
mm.
do you find the emotion in a piece, and how then do you exploit that with painting?
Uh, I think it's a combination of my own head and what I've seen other people do, in a sense that it doesn't make sense to me. Because I had a philosophy that I wanted to respect the mood of the character that I'm gonna paint. So if it's let's take the Games Workshop University
Mhm.
universe, not university.
There probably
uh,
will be a Games
so
Workshop University sooner or later. That's their next
probably,
marketing
yeah.
plan.
Yeah. So if it's an orc or an elf or a space marine, they are different characters with different feels, right? And if you're painting something that is royal or a farmer or whatever it is, you have to respect that and think about how to try to catch the mood that the character probably is in. And that has been my philosophy. And I try to get that across to my students as well, that if you're painting, I mean, it depends on the scale also a little bit, because if you're painting smaller, I think in my experience, things has to be a little bit more smooth,
Mm.
because otherwise it looks too messy. But bigger scales like busts and 75 millimeters, if you paint a demon or an orc with a super smooth skin, it doesn't make sense to me. It's like something is wrong here. Um, because a smooth paint job transcends something different than something with texture and things going on.
Yeah,
Do you know what I mean?
yeah. You
Uh,
kind of have to pick the right approach depending on the subject. The type of subject, I guess.
yeah, yeah. So, but sometimes I get comments. People say that my work is. I don't think it's more smooth than anyone else, of course not. But they say it looks so smooth and well blended. But to be honest, I'm not an expert at doing smooth stuff. I do it smooth enough for the character or the area I'm painting, but it's not something I'm aiming for at all. It just has to look right to me. Um, but I also, you referred to my style as dark, etc. I think the characters, if I'm painting something for myself, I'm always been drawn to the more dark, gritty, horror type of characters. I really like that, both in movies and characters drawn by artists or whatever. So it's kind of naturally feels good for me to paint those. But since I'm also a commission painter, I have to paint stuff that's just thrown at me. Yeah, and it's even if the miniature looks horrible to me and it's not my cup of tea at all, I have to learn how to make it look decent anyway.
When I say dark, I kind of mean in the palette as well, because you have a very very deep shadow, and
Mm,
usually lots of shadow as well. I'm thinking of the one you recently completed with the horse and the rider. Um,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, is it something you do to allow you to really highlight certain elements, or is it something that you kind of influenced by films or art or something else?
To be honest, I don't know why I'm going that direction at the moment. I think maybe it will change over time again because I'm just going towards that direction. But I think it is because I can get a wider variety of colors and light in there. I think if you have a sort of a mid-tone range of colors and you just go a little bit darker and a little bit lighter, the variety of expression is kind of lacking to me. But if I widen the whole spectrum of light and colors, uh, it just feels like I have a much bigger canvas to play with. It's I guess what you are thinking over time and in periods about your art or music or whatever you're doing. It's like because I remember I was hooked on contrasts earlier. And to be honest, I didn't know what contrast meant because people were just talking about from dark to light when I started to paint. But contrast can be so many things.
Well, as you've already said,
Uh,
texture is a really nice contrast to play with, isn't it? I'm looking at the one now
mm,
with the rider. The horse has a very sort of, I don't want to say rough, but has a very textured, the
mm,
way you've painted, obviously, because it's, a furry animal. But then
mm,
contrasting that with the non-metallic metal and the sheen of the armor, there's a nice
mm.
contrast there in terms of the texture rather than just the light.
Yeah, yeah. I think I wanted to. I followed the art a little. That was the idea to follow the art and try to copy it, but it sometimes it doesn't work fully because a 3D miniature is something different than a flat surface, and the effect changes a bit if you try the same approach as a 2D artist. So I had to change it a little bit, but the idea is that the horse is just a piece of background and it doesn't have too much information because the horse is quite kind of big. So if I put too much attention on the horse or on the cloak, which is also very big, we lose the focus on the rider. And I chose to have the rider and the ring she's holding, and as the first,
The main focus.
yeah, the main thing, and then you go to the dog because it's so bright, and the rest is just a background noise, sort of. So when you're looking at it from a distance, this is what you should see, or at least it was my idea.
Yeah, I think the first things you notice are hair and head, and the ring,
Mm,
and the dog, and then the armor. I suppose. I I suppose that the horse, the cloak, and everything is context rather than character, isn't it? It's there to support what you're trying to foreground, the rider and the dog.
yeah, exactly. And then the background was actually darker from the beginning, but I had to contrast the horse with something, otherwise it would just disappear.
That must have got quite tricky then, though, because then, moving up in light from the horse, you're moving towards
Mm,
the rider, so that you have to find the right balance, I guess, in between the two.
yeah, but what I did was I contrasted the background noise with the armor with the cold
Yeah.
versus warm contrast. So, and the warm is always feels closer to your eyes than a cold tone. So I think it was a clever choice to do it that way.
So really, we have at least three contrasts going on in this piece. There's the texture, the temperature,
Mm,
and the light.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And it's not so much about color contrasts here because there's not really a lot of color going on. Uh,
Tonally, it's in a
it's a,
relatively narrow range, isn't it? Color-wise,
yeah,
relatively. I mean,
and I
not
think
completely.
no, I think the original is even less colors.
Mhm.
It's more grayish.
But as you say, what works for an illustration and what works for a 3D piece is two
Mm,
different things, aren't they?
yeah, yeah.
How much do you think you can alter a piece through painting? How much do you think you can change its intent? I mean, I know you say you try to honor the intent of the actual original.
Yeah, I think we can do it a lot, and you see that especially in workshops you are doing when everyone is painting the same figure. It's like if we are taking a face, for example, at a bust, which is the easiest one, you have the scout, the original thought of the expression, and it's mm, it's hard to say that you could. paint the face plain, just the same expression as the sculptor did, because in the end, to me anyway, it doesn't end up like that. In most cases anyway, it's you can change this a lot. You can change if you understand the volumes of a face, you can change her or his face to look sad, a little bit more happy, a little bit more angry, because what you're actually doing is that you are sculpting on the sculpt, but with paint. So you can change a lot. You can make the face look more, how do you say, thin? No, or bigger. It depends on how you treat the volumes. And that's the first step. And the second one is all the micro volumes, like if you want the face to look younger or older, or as long as you keep the face in a straight, realistic way. So the nose is not like bended or anything. It's very easy to paint something that looks wrong in that way. That's the face, and of course you change the mood or the overall feel of the miniature by choosing colors and the light. If it's a happy feeling, summertime feeling, or if it's a darker dungeon type of feel or a snow cold feel. I mean, it's you can go in many directions, and usually I let the miniature guide me a bit, because if it's a figure with a very thick fur, it makes no sense to have such a big thick bear fur on your shoulders and on your back if it's 40 degrees outside. You know what I mean? So maybe, yeah, go for a colder feel, or autumn or whatever, and that reflects how you use the colors as well. But then we have a lot of miniatures that are neutral, that you can, like for the horse, for example, that you just showed me that I painted. That could be anything. Could be any kind of temperature outside, or any colors, happy or sad or whatever you want to transcend, I guess. But I think the dark side again comes a lot from focus. It's much more easy for me to paint something dark and put less attention there than if it's bright and or a mid type of tonality, and make that an area you should not look at, if you know what I mean. So I mean, all my dark areas is not, they are not black. I mean, there is something is going on there. I do some texture or because otherwise this area would be just look dead and nothing. But compared to the strong light I do, it looks almost black, because at least in pictures, because the contrast is so big. But it wouldn't work at a competition if you just paint something dark and flat, and then the judges would be, it's like it's not all, it's not like it's not painted at all in those areas, and that's not what I'm striving for anyway.
How much do you consider how it's going to be seen when you paint it? Because I mean, the lighting conditions at different shows can be quite different and can very much affect the color and the contrast of painting.
Yeah, I know. It's to be honest, I don't think about it at all. I don't consider how anyone else would see my figures. I just trust my own instinct that I've been working with for since 2010, I guess, and I know pretty much what's working for me. And when I trust myself enough that this is good, usually people agree. So that's the way you get more confidence, I guess. You do something that you believe in, and people are saying, "Yeah, this is super great. This you really succeed with this." Or, but also feedback that is when people tell you, "Well, this and this you should try maybe another direction. And that's how you learn, you know. You can't be good on everything, but I don't consider or think about the only thing I know is that if you're going to a Golden Demon contest, you have to have a little bit different approach than what I'm aiming for. And since I'm not interested in that approach that much, I'm not going to any Golden Demons because it's something a little bit different. It's less artistic expression and more a clear Games Workshop approach to when it comes to their lore or their universe, sort of.
It always strikes me as because I've been to a couple, and I enjoyed it
Mm,
very much actually. Because I mean, one of the reasons I got back into painting miniatures rather than scale models is because I have a
mm,
son, and just for something to do together, I thought I'd try Warhammer again. And he's
yeah.
really into it, but it got me back into it in a big way as well because I haven't touched it since I was about 14, something like that, 13, 14.
Mm, mm,
So we've been to some events and I really enjoyed them, really liked it, loved it. But the style at Golden Demons seems to be excessively technical
yeah, yeah. It
as
is
opposed to
as well. Yeah.
artistic. You know, it is very much about
Super technical.
hitting those notes for what they're looking for in the judging and the style. And
Mm,
yeah,
mm. Exactly my experience as well. It has to be super super clean in every way. So when I tried years back and even today, if I try to paint like that, I lose my uh, feeling for why I am doing this. I'm not trying to hit every note perfect. I want to express something else rather than perfection. Even though I agree, I mean, the best painters and the best pieces at Golden Demon is just wow. But it's also uh, I can't speak for everyone at the Golden Demon contest, of course, but in general, this is what we talked a little bit about earlier. When you see a piece that has many details, and at a Golden Demon or their style or whatever, you have to saturate, you have to show the sculpt, even if it's a small uh, I don't know, a stone on the base or a mushroom or whatever. It has to be shown. So everything more or less has an even uh, flow of light and colors. Do you know what I mean?
yeah, you
Instead
treat
of just
every
show,
part
yeah,
on it as it's exactly as
mm,
important as every other part,
yeah,
rather than
exactly,
choosing what's telling the story and what the important emotion is, and
yeah,
then supporting it with
yeah,
everything.
exactly. And I've been striving for that concept for so many years, just through watching my favorite artists in books and stuff. Patrick Jones, Broom, and so on. And so I got into that concept so much that the other concept where you have to show every part should be more or less the same. So I just lost the interest in that concept. Even though when I'm doing art commissions for Cool Mini or Not or whatever, it's gaming figures, and I can't paint the shoes so you don't see them on
Yeah.
the miniature just because it's further down, but it's work. It's not my. I don't try to express much. I just paint on experience more or less, just to have a good product.
I mean, most commissions aren't expression, are there? I mean, there are commissions where people want you to do what you do, and they want that.
Yeah.
But most
Mm,
of them are they want you to do what they need, which is not the same as to insert your expression into that wouldn't be appropriate, if you see what I mean.
no.
You're being
Yeah.
paid to do
Exactly.
something specific, so you do that
Mm,
thing rather than
mm,
no, I'm going to do what I do, and you're going to like it.
yeah. Yeah. I've been. I guess you know who Mike McVeigh
Yeah.
is. Yeah. I've been working for him, I don't know, maybe 7 or 8 years or so. So it's through him. He's one of the directors for Cool Mini or Not. So he's the one I'm working for directly, not Cool Mini or Not. So he's sending me the material I need, and if I need to bounce something with him, because I'm always sending him work in progress stuff. He sometimes tells me that, okay, you have to paint, you have to simplify things here, because maybe I'm trying to get my own style or making stuff more complex than it needs to be just to display a figure for a game, you know? So I guess that balance is important if you're doing this uh, professionally and you also try to do it for competitions for your own pleasure sort of thing.
Do you think for gaming minis as well? I mean, I think in terms of esteem, it should be there's a parity, obviously, but the object of gaming minis is different from the object of display miniatures. In
Mm,
that gaming miniatures are typically when people paint them, they're not trying to paint them as well as possible because they're trying to often they're painting an army or something. So it has to be very
mm.
clean and very clear. So do you think when you're doing commission work for gaming miniatures, they want something that looks probably better than achievable for most painters, but in that sort of range? Do you think
Yeah,
that's
it
part
has
of
to
it?
be, yeah, it has to be clear what you're actually looking at, no doubt on anything. It's just has to showcase the whole sculpt and the character for this particular game, I guess. Uh, so yeah, and as you say, it also has to do with the scale as well. I mean, I know there is a lot of bigger miniatures in the gaming world as well, but as a standard 32 millimeters, it's kind of small. So then it has to be cleaner in at least the volumes and the areas you want to show has to be strong, so you actually see the figure for what it is, even if it's so small. So I don't think it's okay for Golden Demon, of course, but for the display miniatures for a game, uh, at least those that I do, it doesn't have to have a perfect blend or anything. It's just that it has to have to paint strong in the important places for the miniatures to just look good and people want to buy the game. It's just a part of the whole concept. A good game, good sculpts, and the decent paints to showcase the whole thing.
Going back to sort of display miniatures, do you think people at the moment, when you're judging, when you're looking, do you think people put enough emotion into figures?
Uh, I thought about that one. To me, at least, I think emotion can mean a few things. It can be that you have emotions, some emotions, I hope, when you're painting whatever it is, and sometimes it transcends into what you're doing, and sometimes not, even if you think it does. I can do a lot of parallel things with music since I'm a musician and I've been doing that for many years, that you are playing stuff that is very technically once again, but you lose the emotion because it's getting too technical. And it's a flow that's something you learned, and it could look very cool, very nice when you look at the pictures or you hear the music. It's very fast and it's very strong, and you get impressed by it. But when you are actually, do you feel something?
Mm.
I think in most cases, no. So that's what I meant with very technical pieces where it's lacking focus. To me, I get impressed by certain elements with the blends and the contrast maybe, but it's not necessarily I feel anything. It's not telling me anything.
It can make some pieces quite cold. That technically they're
Yeah.
brilliant, but they don't
Mm.
inspire. They don't give you any kind of feeling at all.
And I think it's very hard to uh, especially to talk about your own work. I have no idea what my work transcends if someone is watching it and what they feel, and if it's comparable with what I felt when I did it, etc. I have no idea, but I know when I see a good piece if it has that little extra. And it doesn't have to be in the storytelling. I think a few years back, the storytelling was very clear what people did. I think with the massive voodoo team and everything they did, they told the story with their pieces in a very clear way. It was very obvious. If I don't know, a princess were laying on the ground with an apple that fell out of her hand, and she took a bite, and now she's dead. It's obviously the story is kind of simple. You understand directly what you're looking at. But I'm trying to do storytelling just by ambience and the expression of the miniature. So it doesn't necessarily has to have a lot of gadgets around the miniature itself. It could be a story just in a bust, you know. That's what I'm aiming for, even though I'm not completely sure how I do it. I don't have a super formula for it, and that's the tricky part about painting. It's that's why I get in the beginning I got confused by it, but today I know that it's just something that's not for me, for my level. You know, all those YouTubers who write how to paint red, how to paint a face, how to paint. And for me, it's not about how, okay, this is how he or she does it in this video, but it doesn't mean at all that this is how you paint a face because you can do it in 100 different ways. And that's the tricky part. You have to understand the whole concept, not how to paint a certain thing in one way or two ways. You have to understand to have the freedom to do whatever you want.
All my analogies are based on food because I like to eat, but I like to cook as well.
Yeah.
For me, it's the difference between getting a recipe and following it exactly and understanding and knowing the ingredients. I suppose for music, it's the difference
Yeah.
between doing a cover of someone else's song and understanding music, understanding how music works. So if you have an understanding of the components and the tools of what you're doing, painting, of your materials, of light, of contrast, of texture and everything else, then you're going to paint a better face than copying what someone else has said. This is how you paint a face.
Yeah, exactly. I think the younger generation that is a little bit fooled by what's going on YouTube in general, because the YouTubers are mainly always talking about certain things that they took out of context and just present it in a way that is, I don't know, at least for me, useless. If you're watching, I'm a drummer, so if I watch other drummers on YouTube, they take something that they call a lick, and they play that, and they show you a lick, but why? Why are you showing me this? What can I do with it? And where does it come from? And they just want viewers, you know. They want thumbs up. They don't really care about you or your musical journey or your painting journey. It's something else. So it's
or they want patrons,
yeah.
and it's a Patreon.
Yeah.
I think there's a fundamental misunderstanding about YouTube at the moment, which has come about because YouTube has changed over the last 5-10 years, which is that people go there looking to find out how to do something. But YouTubers, I think, are finding that the only way to get it to work for you as an endeavor is to do things that feed the algorithm and feed views. So I think a lot of people that watch these things would never actually do them. They just enjoy watching someone do it.
Yeah,
and that's
exactly.
who they're making it for. They're not really making it to show you how to do something. They're doing it for the views, for the, like you said.
Yeah, they feed the viewer with the material rather than doing it yourself. But of course, if you want to change a bulb on your car, they can show you on YouTube how you do it. And there's probably just one way to do it. But art and music and stuff, it's
That's how I leveled the plate on my printer yesterday. I looked up a YouTube, so yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, talking of learning, though, what a gorgeous segue. You have a workshop coming up with Scale Model Challenge
Yes.
on the 22nd and 23rd of February in Eindhoven. So, what can you tell us about the workshop? What can people expect?
Uh, well, the workshop will be. I don't know if it's super different than anyone else's workshop in terms of people sitting down and paint together, but the thing I'm trying to do that might be different is I don't go in and having a class and I tell them exactly what how to do things, going in with the approach, I'm the star, just do what I tell you to do, because my wife and we are also working in school. My wife is a teacher, and so I'm kind of used to the kind of approach you should have against students. It's not about me, it's about them, right? They are here to learn. So uh, I they have to ask me the question, and I try to have as much of a chat as possible to just bounce things around and see if one option is better than the other option and why. Why are we trying to paint this way rather than this way? What is better? Have a discussion. And so I usually go around the class, and they ask me one question each. That's usually how we begin. And the whole group can try to answer the question instead of me doing it. And we'll see where we end up. Uh, but of course, in the end, I don't know. It's better that the end result uh, came from a student, then I just tell them this is the way to do it. So together we comes comes up with a decent answer that everyone can relate to. And this way it's much more easy to adapt to the levels of the students, because sometimes someone uh, have won gold in the master category in Scale Model Challenge, for example, and someone has just been painting for 6 months. So it's very hard to go in with the approach, not even meeting your students beforehand, and have a great plan for everyone. It's impossible.
Yeah, it would be like trying to teach children of different ages across 10 years and one lesson,
Yeah.
wouldn't it? That they're all at different levels and they all require different things and all want to know different things. So
Yes, exactly.
you can't go in with a plan saying this is what we're going to do. You have to kind of,
Mm.
as you say, let
Yeah.
them lead it.
So I want to get inside their
Mm.
heads and what they have been thinking about regarding painting. What do they have? What's the problem they are struggling with right now, etc. So yeah.
Now, a bust is provided with some
Yes.
disposables for mixing paint, etc. Um,
Mm.
people do need to bring along their own stuff. If people head to scalemodelchallenge.com, you will find a link there for the workshop with Robert, and that will give you the details of what you need. But I mean, the reason I'm talking about that is so there's a bus provided, there's something that's sort of a common ground for everyone to work on, and then you will, I presume, go around looking at each one, talking to people, and helping them kind of achieve their goals rather than telling them how to do it.
Yeah, exactly. Um, because from my experience, I've been going to a few workshops in the past as well. And from that, if you get a decent result at the workshop where you have a sculpt, it is what it
Yeah.
is. It has it has a pose that you learn from by a teacher, that the light and the volumes looks like
Mm.
this. And when you come home and you paint something totally different, that information is kind of useless if you didn't understand the full concept of miniature painting.
Well, all you've really
Uh,
learned to do then is to paint that bus the way they told you to paint it,
yeah,
isn't it? Yeah.
exactly, exactly. Yeah, yeah. So that's what I'm trying to get away from. So hopefully they leave the workshop with a lot of information that can adapt on the whole concept of miniature painting rather than just one miniature. So the bust in this case could be anything. It's just an object to practice a bit on.
I think if everyone's got the same one as well, though, you can look at each other's and learn from each other's and talk about them as well. While having that
Mm,
common element, I would have thought would help people to compare and contrast and talk about what they're doing
yeah,
together.
yeah, exactly. So what I do is I always talk about things, and I talk to the students as a whole group. But and when everyone starts to paint something, I go around and I kind of coaches everyone and get an understanding of their level, and I'm going around. So I have to adapt all the time, and I think it's a very good thing both for the students and for myself too. I learn a lot as well when I do my workshops.
The only thing I don't like about the Scale Model Challenge workshops at the show is that there's only so much you can do in, say, 4 hours for the longer ones. But this is a whole,
Mm, mm.
well, it's spread over 2 days. I don't think it's a full
Yeah,
2 days, is it? But it's spread over 2 days. So you can get some pretty intense learning in that time.
yeah. Usually people are kind of blank
Mm.
the first day, and then when they go home after an intense 8 hours, they have a lot more questions day two because they absorbed everything and uh, just some questions popped up that they didn't understand or they want to know more about. So yeah, I think 2 days is good.
Fantastic. Well, as I said, people, you can find out everything you need to know about it at scalemodelchallenge.com, and do get over there as soon as you can to make sure you get a ticket because spaces will be limited. How many spaces overall are in the workshop? How many people will you have in the?
15,
Yeah, so
I
it's not a
think.
big group, which is
Yeah.
great because you
Mm,
don't want,
mm.
you don't want to go to a group that's like 40 people because you'll get 5 minutes of of chatting.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
just 15. So get over there as soon as you can. Make sure you get a ticket. It's coming up in just over a month, so do it as quick as you can. Okay. Robert, why do you think we make little things? What do you think it is we get out of doing it that we don't get out of other creative endeavors?
For me, I think it's because I can handle the size. If you are traveling or you're going to a friend, or if you're a gamer or whatever, if you are doing big canvas type of painting, it's a little bit more uncomfortable to load your car or take your canvas on the bicycle. It's not work. I did a lot of drawing and when I was younger, and of course you can do that on a A4 size. It doesn't have to be that big, but I don't know why I'm drawn. I think it has a lot to do with the 3D thing. I like to paint stuff in 3D rather than 2D. That's why I suck on freehand, for example. Uh, I think I just was drawn to that for a reason because you can actually just hold something and you see it from different angles. It's more realistic in that way. It's
Yeah.
actually an object that it is what it is. And if you're looking at pictures or paintings on a wall, it's just one view, you know. I think that's the answer for me, that I can touch something and see it from whatever view I like.
All right, Robert,
Yeah.
I want to thank you for coming on today and for telling us about your
Th
work and about the workshop.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And yeah, thanks very much.
Thank you.
I love Robert's work. His focus on contrast at multiple levels adds a level of richness and intensity that I really love. He uses saturation far more sparingly than some, but that just makes it more potent when he does. And what he said about leaving some areas less detailed chimed very much with the same thing Tue Carr said in his episode of The Model Philosopher about colour. It's something I want to try in my own work, as I come more from an armour, ships and aircraft background, which is usually far more maximalist in detail. Here the aim is very much to find every small feature and highlight it to impress upon the viewer with detail, both the detail of the subject and our own facility to reproduce it. It would be interesting to see if downplaying some detail and highlighting others could be used to focus the eye, and the value or not that may have in ordnance modelling. I can see how it would greatly help in dioramas and storytelling, but it would be interesting to see if it serves a purpose on single subject models also. Unfortunately, I'm unable to make it to Robert's workshop as I have clashing commitments, but I hope some of you will be able to take part. To get hands-on, painting with someone at Robert's level is a rare opportunity and one that you shouldn't pass up. You can find out all the details at scalemodelchallenge.com. Thank you to our sponsors Anish and Scale Model Challenge, and to the Model Philosopher patrons. You can support the show as a patron at patreon.com/themodelphilosopher. You can also support the show by leaving a review on your podcast app of choice and by sharing the posts on Facebook and Instagram. Don't forget, you can also buy my own products, ITA3, resin upgrade and detail parts at InsideTheArmor.com, or if you're in the European Union, go to anish.io to buy them licensed produced by Tom at Anish. The quality and service is unmatched from Anish. You won't be disappointed. Thank you for listening, and until next time, take care.